Phosphor Dot friends, Earl at thelogbook.com, back to play something relatively new. This is a game that just came out last year, so I suppose calling this Phosphor Dot Fossils is getting to be a bit of a misnomer, because I'm playing something that could be described as reasonably new. But this is probably my new favorite game that has captured my imagination in recent weeks, and so I thought I'd share it with you. This one's a bit of a long player. This is called Mars Horizon, and basically you are playing through kind of an alternate history of the space program. You start out with the space race of the 1950s and 60s, and then you have to keep your space program alive through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and so on. The ultimate goal is that you are trying to reach Mars. You're trying to land the first human crew on Mars. Now, all of this is filtered through the technology that did exist during our space program. So, let me get a new game started here. You can play as any number of agencies. You can play as Japan, China, the Soviet Union, although in accordance with real history, at some point around late 91, early 92, the Soviet Union becomes Russia. You can play as NASA, or you can play as ESA, the European Space Agency. So, let's go ahead and play as NASA. I think that's what a lot of us are probably familiar with from the standpoint of knowing the history of the American space program. And I'm going to play as Pioneer, which is basically, this is normal difficulty. Explorer is Novice. That's good if you're doing a tutorial level, which I've switched the tutorial off. Veteran ramps up the difficulty quite a bit. Let's just play a normal game. The space race has begun. Staying ahead of the pack will require unprecedented feats of engineering and no shortage of daring. Your role is to develop our space program, leading us into orbit and beyond. Keep our agency at the forefront of space science and inspire generations to come with our triumphs. So, basically what you are trying to do is you're trying to survive the space race. Now, the first thing you have to do is get some research started. If you remember, research is a very important task in surviving Mars, which I have also played on here and played on Twitch fairly frequently. And this has a very similar structure. You have a tech tree of missions, which basically you research first a mission profile, and then you research the actual payload. Then you have to start building rockets. You have to start building facilities to support your ever-expanding mission. So, all of that lies ahead. There is our fledgling space base there. Now, I believe that we have the HQ building and the vehicle hangar pre-built. Some of this will have to be cleared, and that costs. Sometimes it costs a lot, like moving these rock formations out of the way. That's expensive. You cannot move the lake. You can move the rock formations, and you can clear the land. And word of advice up front, this area, this square area on this peninsula, that's all you get. nothing happens where the game opens up and you get land over here or down here. That's all you get. Everything has to fit in that space. Diplomacy is an important part of the game. You foster relationships with other superpowers and with other spacefaring powers. And as the game begins, especially if you're playing as NASA, if you're playing as the US, you're in, you are very much in an adversarial relationship with the Russian or Soviet Space Agency. So, we going to build this first vehicle. And go from there. Like I said, this is a long play game. This is not something that is going to be finished in a single session. So I figure I'll probably do this sort of like I've been doing Dune 2000, where I will play for 15-20 minutes, and then that's the end of the video. Next month, you can fast forward a month. It's 1 month until our sounding rocket is complete. You can also just go to the next event, although sometimes that isn't necessarily the next event that you're expecting. It could be something else that happens that is random to the game. Alright, our sounding rocket is ready to go. Time to begin launch preparations. There's no crew, so you don't have to worry about having astronauts on the payroll yet. Training is not available yet because you haven't built the buildings for it. You can't even set a launch date because you have not built a small launch pad yet. So, our mission plan is kind of in limbo. Alright, so we have completed research into the artificial satellite. Obviously, what we need to work on doing now is a small launch pad. Alright, that research is completed. Okay, down here you have the envelope, please. And that lets you pull up a fairly recent history of announcements made by the other spacefaring powers, as well as developments on your own end. So, ESA and Japan are going to try to launch their own test launch in the next 3 months. So, let's see. The little plus symbol means it's a good idea to put this next to that structure. There's a minus symbol. It actually confers a negative effect. Alright, so construction has begun on our small launch pad. We need to start building some rockets and something beyond. Alright, the launch pad is complete. We need to start thinking beyond what we have going on. Alright, it's time to set a launch date. It's going to be a crowded month. ESA and Japan and us. All trying to launch something in July 1957. So, here is our test launch, our sounding rocket. And with every launch, there is a chance, sometimes only a small one, but there is a chance things will not go well. Oof. 33% launch reliability. We can but try.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Did we do it? Oof. Every time you launch a specific kind of booster, you gain experience that makes it more reliable. The next time, hey, so we got the first test launch up before Japan, before the European Space Agency. Alright, so it's time, but not time yet because we haven't researched the payload, to start thinking in terms of something orbital. You have two different kinds of missions: milestones, which are required to advance in the game, and you have requests, which are sometimes they're commercial satellite requests that will pop up later, and sometimes they are something else. Sometimes they will bring in revenue, which is very much needed, so really you ignore request missions at your own peril. Alright, let's research that Explorer payload, that first artificial satellite. And that motorcycle right out my door. Alright, so we've unlocked the artificial satellite mission. We can start planning it. And much like what happened with the real history of NASA, this is our first payload. Okay, we have a request mission. But this early in the game, we only have one mission slot available. Our ability to track missions, manage missions, only extends to one mission at a time. Lunar missions will be unlocked over time. There are even request missions for the moon and other planets. So, alright. Europe, Japan, and China have all done their own test launches. We are obviously in an alternate universe where the Soviet Union is lagging way behind. Alright, our satellite is ready. It needs a rocket. Now, since I already researched the rocket, it's a pretty obvious selection. We have a field of one thing to choose from. You start out by choosing an upper stage and then a lower stage. Your upper stage has to meet or equal the mass stated for the payload. So the payload is 15 kilograms. The upper stage has to be able to lift 15 kilograms to Earth orbit. So that upper stage is fine. The lower stage has to be able to lift 300 kilograms because it's not just lifting the 15 kilograms of the payload, but it's lifting the entire upper stage as well. The game randomly assigns names to these, and that's fine. Later on, you will have options of having contractors build these, sometimes cheaper but slower, sometimes faster but a lot more expensive, and various variations on speed and expense. Alright, everyone is going to be trying to launch an artificial satellite. Our booster will be ready in 2 months. That is also when we face our first funding review. A lot of it depends on public support, so there's a kind of a political and PR element to the game. Our public support is strong, so we got a bit of a raise. Alright, our booster is ready. So let's get this bird up there as soon as possible. Green months on the launch calendar. Okay, those are optimal launch dates. Orange months, not so much, and that costs you reliability on the booster. A greater chance that something will go wrong. Red months, you can't do it. So for whatever reason, April is not a good month for this first artificial satellite. We have February, a month from now. February 1958. Let's do it. Let's do it to it. Alright, we will continue our research. We have completed the research on a lunar orbit mission. Now we will still need to research the payload for that, but I think it would also be wise to go ahead and start building the rockets. The lower and upper stages of the rockets that will make early moon missions without a crew possible. Launch day, February 1958. So, Sputnik is not going to happen in this timeline. Maybe we can get there first. And it's raining. That's not always the kiss of death to a mission, but you really have to look at the numbers and see just how lucky you feel. 68% launch reliability. I may regret this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And
We have liftoff.
alright, I think we made it to orbit. Alright, that's nominal. Everything's nominal. Now, once you get into satellites and missions, it's not over yet. Alright, we have to collect 2 comms and 2 data. And you accomplish this by spending power. You have 4 turns where you can build a command sequence. Always a good idea to include a power recharge. Alright, so you've accumulated 1 data. But you can use that to... Okay, I'm going to include a recharge cycle. If I spend 1 unit of power and that 1 unit of data, I can get 3 units of comms. So we're down to 0 data, but it didn't go right. Alright, this command's output will be reduced by 1 unit of comms unless you spend 1 unit of power to resist the event, which I'm going to do just because I'm showing you kind of how this works. Alright, so I spent 1 more power for that turn than I really intended to. But I do have 3 units of comms. So, by now spending 1 unit of power and 1 of my units of comms, I can buy 3 units of data. This part of it is really a puzzle. It's kind of a... yeah. It's going to make me spend another unit of power there. Alright, last turn. Now, you're at minimum, you have to come up with 2 units of comms and 2 units of data. But you get a 50% bonus reward if you come up with this amount. 3 units of comms, 3 units of data. So what I'm going to do, since I have 3 units of data already, is I've set a battery recharge as the first event. And I'm going to spend the unit of power that gets me on 1 more unit of comms. Or at least I'm going to try. If you're wondering what factors into how easy it is for a failure to occur, that's your payload reliability, which that happens as a result of decisions made on the ground. And there is our first artificial satellite that Earl Green 1. Alright, we were the first space agency in the world to orbit the satellite. Take that, Sputnik. So, there you have it. We've been playing this for a little over 20 minutes. So, we're going to stop here and pick up at this point next week. And things will start getting a lot more interesting. Things start happening a lot faster. Space is hard.